Welcome back, everybody, to the Can-Am Connection. My partner, Jody, is not with us today. He had to work a double shift, so Nathan is here. We've got some other guests possibly dropping in at some point. We'll add them as they come in. Jay Clean, Marco, Dan, how are you doing? 8 other people. Make sure you hit like on this video, hit subscribe on the channel. Nathan, where do you want to start, man? We got lots to talk about, lots we could talk about.
There are a lot of things happening in arm wrestling right now. A lot of events coming up this month.
Yeah. Which one are you looking forward to the most?
Well, there's matches in each thing that I'm looking forward to. Like a lot of matches I'm looking forward to. Knuckles Up has some really good matches coming up. That'll be an interesting card. Merlot pulling Mario Tambakis. That could be a
yeah,
really
you know
good
what?
match.
All of those matches, I mean, they have a banner image.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not I gotta switch over. I'm gonna pull it up on my other screen. All of the matches that are on there or presumed to be on there have not been announced yet.
Yeah.
So
I think they've just been put out and like possibilities, right?
Yeah. So we have I'm just looking at their
BJ Fakakis, Mendigus Dulskis.
Well, BJ and Mendogas is a pretty exciting match.
Yeah, especially after Mendogas just beat Tim he beat Tim very convincingly, actually.
It's a tall order, man. I know that BJ's got an awesome top roll.
And BJ stylistically, I think, is a better matchup for Mendigus than Tim.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Tim's a shorter guy. I mean, he doesn't have the longest lever for the super heavyweights. BJ's a much bigger human being and does like the low hand. So it's going to be a little more difficult, I think, for Mendigus to get his spot. I think he'll have to approach it a little differently than he did with Tim, for sure.
Yeah. Did you know that I will be in attendance?
You're a guest of honor?
I am a guest. I was going to participate in the, I don't know what they're calling it, like the intermission show.
Oh, okay.
But my presence has been upgraded to the third man in the booth.
Oh, that'll be fun.
So I will be on the commentary team. Oh yeah, there he is. I'll send it to you right now. I'll just copy this link. I'll be on the commentary team with Will and the Aussie arm wrestler.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
That'll be a good time.
I have to do my homework on all these guys that are pulling.
You will. Tom Holland's going to be there. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen Tom Holland in a boring match. So,
Greg, just click on that link.
And then who else do we got? How about Kamil Jablonski pulling again right before he's getting ready to pull East versus West? I mean, guys,
we could.
That left arm match is going to be very, very, very intriguing to me. Just stylistically, I think it's a very.
You're talking about Tobias and
Tobias Sprong and Camille left arm. I think it's a very interesting stylistic matchup because Camille is one way. He's going this way, and from everything I've seen, Tobias is an outside puller. So you get a flop wrist presser against an outside puller, and boy howdy.
Yeah, no kidding. Look who it is, everybody.
Gregg Sharp.
Gregg Sharp, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, guys.
Greg, you might notice that Jody is not with us today.
Yeah. Jody said he had to work a double.
Yeah, I'm subbed in for Jody.
That's all right. Nathan is always a welcome face to see. So
awesome.
He's going to be out with us on the East Coast and in Dallas for the regionals.
I'll be in North Carolina, Atlantic City, and the Fort Worth event. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, Greg is the man behind the World Series of Arm Wrestling. So what do you want to talk about today, Greg? Where do we want to start?
I was hoping that maybe we could come up with 6 winning numbers because for $1.2 billion for Powerball tonight, that would be a good way to start season 3, right?
Yeah, but winning it in California is the worst state to win it in. You get taxed like 4 times.
That's why I have lots of property in Texas, Nathan.
That's true.
No, I appreciate you guys having me on. I mean, we're getting ready for season 3. I got to meet you, Ryan, out in at Dallas. Unfortunately, not under great circumstances for you, during your match. But yeah, I mean, it's we're at season 3 now. We're ramped up. I think the program is where we really want it to be. And season 3 is going to be a little bit twisted in terms of how we're going to market it. We're starting some relationships with the United States military. My son being a lieutenant in the Marine Corps, and Nathan being also a veteran of the service. Navy, correct, Nathan?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we've been looking to start developing relationships with what they call MWR, which is Morale, Welfare, and Recreation, and MCCS with the Marine Corps. And what they basically do is bring in events across the country to entertain the troops. And for us, I think it's a real atypical crowd that we're going to try to generate some enthusiasm behind that is a very loyal crowd. And I think that's part of developing the series, is trying to find groups outside of who normally watch what we do and do it in a way that it becomes interesting. And I think, getting involved with the military and having a military series and then being able to market it outside of the normal, YouTube 15, 20,000 viewers in America, to maybe hit more of the 10 million to 50 million viewers in North America that are active, that want some great entertainment to watch, will help generate more interest. Just like the wicked tunas of the world, the swamp people of the world, the what do they call the catch up there off of the coast of Canada? Deadly catch.
Deadliest catch. Yeah.
Deadliest catch. These are all kind of niche topics or lifestyles that really became popular because it started to generate interest outside of the niche, right? So hopefully we're going to build some excitement through season 2 and that release, following the athletes around, and then working into season 3, which will be an additional 4 episodes. So we go from season 2 at 10 episodes to season 3 at 14 episodes, and we've got some bigger players now that are showing some real interest, which is great, and that's where we really wanted to be on our 5-year plan. So
yeah, Gregg told me about the military. As soon as Gregg told me about the military thing, I completely, jumped on board with it, wholeheartedly, because, as a disabled veteran, it's near and dear to my heart. So he's like, I want to go to bases and do seminars and stuff like that and stuff. I'm like, just whatever you need there, I'm more than willing. I still have all my base accesses and stuff like that, so I can get on, all the installations and do all that stuff. So for me, it was a no-brainer to want to be involved in that.
Well, and the first stop for us in Jacksonville, and we're going to have a military division in every location. Now, whether it's well received in certain areas, that's going to be marketing. That's kind of the newness. You always have that in a business where you're going to have a ramp up time. But the great thing about North Carolina, which I haven't had a chance to talk to Nathan about, is the Thursday before at 7:30, which is really an early time for us West Coasters, because I'm going to be on a 3-hour lag between California to North Carolina. But we're going to be in front of roughly 1,000 troops, the 2-6 out there at Camp Lejeune. And they're going to be there to listen to us, and we're going to set up a table or two and, just kind of have a seminar with the athletes and really build some interest. And the cool thing is that our host for North Carolina is a ex-Marine, if you're really ever an ex-military person, but let's say a retired Marine at this point, owns a couple of big facilities for working out in the North Carolina area, and was an ex-champ for me at Explode Fight Series. So we've had a few decades of connection there, and he was welcoming us in and right outside the base. So I'm not only excited to see who we bring in terms of the North Carolina area, Tennessee, we've had commitments coming in, Florida, we've had commitments coming in, but, it may be our biggest crowd, which will be great. We always find in these events, you get your arm wrestler +1, right? Maybe you get your arm wrestler +2. So if you have 100 arm wrestlers, you may have 100 fans. You may only have 50 fans. But in North Carolina, we potentially may have 300, 400 fans that are going to be there, which will change the dynamic. And I think that's a real important value that we're looking to try to bring in is to get more excitement the day of the event, which kind of leads to a few more projects that we've got in the works for the 2025 season. But we're excited. Then we head up to Atlantic City, where we're going to be at the Valley Casino at the Yard. It's a great location. It's got a great stage, sound system. And here's the great thing. It's the summertime in Atlantic City. So once again, they are going to be promoting it and marketing it right in the casino. We've got our trailer running in there now. We've got flyers going up. We anticipate they can hold 600-700 people in that location. We anticipate people from the beach, the boardwalk, the hotel. We may find 300 to 500 people cheering people on. And I think that's a dynamic that I've tried to create, over the period of time is to bring the crowd to the event instead of bring the viewer to YouTube. Not that YouTube is bad, but when you bring these people to the event, how many times have we've all been in an event or I've been an MC and I say, okay, guys, let's hear it. We got a match, and it's like you got crickets in the crowd and you're like, guys, we got a great match going on. And, nobody's even shouting, nobody's cheering.
Yeah.
And now we can bring a crowd dynamic, which I'm hoping, translates out to, again, that snowball effect of building that atypical crowd, the atypical viewer, and really start to build what I'll call, hometown heroes and build those hometown heroes around that promotion to become, a well-viewed TV show. And that's what we want. When I got into this, people asked me, you're going to be a promoter. And I said, no, I don't really want to be a promoter. I mean, I have to be a promoter in order to get the event to the tables, right? I have to be able to put the flyers out. I have to put the marketing out. But if I'm going to be a promoter, then what makes me different than the other 150 promoters that throw a show on a weekend? And I wanted to establish a value that took me aside. And one of those was to add value in terms of a prize money at the end of a series, so that people are actually coming and their money means something, right? You pay your $50 for a regional, but when you come to the finals, it's free. And if you win, you're winning thousands of dollars. So in that way, we've tried to create a different dynamic. The second dynamic is that we want to tell stories. You can go on YouTube and listen to, great, East versus West, Knuckles Up guys. You see their streams, their videos. How many of them are really telling a story? How many of them have followed Jody Williams around and his family last year and put him in an episode? How many of them are talking about suicide awareness with Justin Green in season 2? How many of them know that Mega Mike is actually a LA County sheriff helicopter pilot who's got an adrenaline junkie complex and took us up into his helicopter and we buzzed the valley and the towers of LA and we followed gangs running through the park as the sheriffs were trying to catch. I mean, so there's so many great stories that we're trying to get the viewer to want to watch. So the arm wrestling it will be as equal to that story. And I'm hoping that really it translates out to the difference of why people would want, People World Series arm wrestling and give us a commitment of time versus maybe somebody else in that, in a similar situation promoting on a weekend. And we try to do it in a very concise manner. I don't want to have a 12-month World Series of arm wrestling qualification period because I think then it becomes a bit pretentious on my end as well. I want to have it so that there's a qualifying period. And then when you qualify, you have then about a 90-day period to determine whether or not you want to go to the finals. Anyone who comes in and pays their fees again this year qualifies for the finals. So whether you're first, second, third, or last, if you come in last and pull, you could still come to the finals, maybe get a luck of the draw, catch an 8th, catch a 6th. Yeah, we pay out to 8 places. And, that to me is how I want to structure it. And that way I'm not flowing over. You qualify, you got 90 days to figure out how to get to San Diego or wherever we are finals, because I also put it out there this year. hey, if New York comes with 700, pullers, which would be a long day, but a great day, trust me, we would not be, if Bally's is not going to argue with us if we have to roll over to Sunday. And certainly the overhead on that is not going to be a problem. But, we want to bring the money to where that area is the most responsive. So if it's in California, or whether it's New York, whether it's Dallas, whoever brings the biggest pull in terms of the pro side, we're going to go there because we want to pay out the pros. And then you got 90 days to figure out how to get there. And then if you win your weight class at a regional, you get a free hotel room for 3 days or 2 days. It's really, you check in Friday, you check out Sunday. So I call it 3 days, you get an early check-in. But that's the gist. And in season 3, we've got a new program coming afterwards, which is called The House. It's a dynamic that I'm kind of emulating a little bit about around the Tough Enough series, The Ultimate Fighter. It's got a great twist. We're going to have 2 teams of 6 athletes come into LA. It's not just arm wrestling. There's going to be quite a bit of interesting events behind that they're going to win or going to compete to win a cash prize. We're putting up $10,000 per team. Whatever team wins gets the $10,000 prize. And then we have a 3rd series coming out in 2025, which I'll bring you guys, give you guys the exclusive first to really let it out, is we're going to have a Thursday night arm fights. And back in the day, I used to box. I'm probably not as fast or as tough as I used to be. And I probably was never as fast as tough or as I thought I was. But one of the great things about boxing was that, you had a Tuesday night, a Thursday night fights. Tuesday was in USA Network. Thursday was on ESPN. And then you had the Saturday and Sunday boxing cards, which were always, a larger volume of events and talent. But what ESPN and USA Network really did that was was they realized that they could carve out a niche and put their timelines on an atypical viewer again. So if 52 weeks a year, there's 6 events on a weekend, I don't want to have a super series that's competing on a Saturday. I don't want to have a super series that's competing on a Friday. I want to have a super series that is a North American based, which is going to be around the World Series of Arm Wrestling again, where Thursday nights we're going to have major events. And when I say major events, we're teaming with some big PR companies that are going to not only, we're not only going to sell tickets to be there, but we're going to have celebrities come in. It's going to be in Los Angeles. It's going to be in New Jersey. It's going to be in Chicago. It's going to be in Dallas. We're going to be in major centers, but we're going to bring that feel to a different day. And that way we get away from competing. And not that we're against competing. If you have a great product, you're going to win, right? I mean, that's the value of competition. The better your product, the more time you put in, the harder you work, you have more chance for success. But I think that the curve is a bit easier when you go outside the box and you look for areas that may have a very strong interest of being of value. And Tuesdays and Thursdays, I think, have that. Now, Tuesdays are hard because Tuesdays are, in the middle of the work week. And, my hands tell the story. I still own a construction company and, I still get out in the field, although I'm not wearing my Carhartt. I threw a shirt on to see you guys. But Thursdays are a little bit easier maybe for people to travel. You can get a longer weekend with your boss, or if you're the boss, you can take an extra day off. But we're going to create a series that's based around finding out really who is that, prolific athlete puller in North America in 2025 and beyond, and really grow our component of the sport outside of everyone else. And I really want to preface that I completely support everyone out there. The guys from Knuckle Up, great guys. I got to meet one of the gentlemen at the Arnold, East versus
Will.
West. Which one is it, Bill? I think is
I think Will. Yeah, Will
really
Espey.
nice guy. Super strong guy. He had some good strength to him. He was running the, I think it was
The high five booth.
Cage.
Yeah, he was in the cage. Yeah,
He would have been in the cage for
powerlifting.
Yeah. But the company would have been Animal Pack, I think.
Animal Pack, yeah, because Martin Ford was there.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something. Martin Ford is a big dude. Not as big in the upper body as I thought he was, but his legs, the hip down, that guy's got some trunks and a half on him. Be interested to see how he would arm wrestle, though. But super strong, nice guy. Engen does a great job East versus West. We're not looking to compete on that end either. He has a different model and a different athlete set that he's really bringing up. So, and I don't really want to compete against any of the local promoters. I try to play real nice in the sandbox. I try to create timelines that make sense for everyone. It's hard to do. There's only 52 weeks of the year, but you do your best and you put it out there. So that's where we're going with it. I think 2024, 2025 is going to be a great combined 2 years of series followed by what we're doing. And, it's kind of because as we grow it, of growth within a company has to start taking hold in some of these centers. And we're seeing it, the social media centers. We're seeing it in the sponsor centers. We're seeing it in the network centers. I had a great conversation with Lionsgate 2 weeks ago. And, we're looking at Showtime and Stars as a possible home for our product here in the not so distant future. Certainly we've had conversations with ESPN and Fox. Tubi TV is a Fox subsidiary. So it's, kind of hand in hand talking with them. So that's where we're going. And we're excited. I mean, obviously I don't wear my excitement as, maybe someone, running around and screaming like the American Psycho out of Texas. But, I am excited. And I'm, I try to temper that excitement with, what I'll call cautiously optimistic performance. I don't ever want to get ahead of myself, but I always stay optimistic about where we're going.
Man, you got a lot of stuff on the go, Greg. I appreciate the exclusive on that. The Thursday night fights is an awesome idea. The storytelling behind it. That's something that the World Arm Wrestling League started to go down the path of, and then they kind of abandoned it a little bit.
Yeah.
But for a while there, they were sending out crews to actually follow guys around in their community. And then all of a sudden it just went away and they got into
your little
match stuff. And,
exactly. Having that vignette, right? Having like a little bit of a background of a person, like what they do in their daily life, lets you get to know the person, lets you feel like you actually have involvement in the product too.
And if you look really carefully, you can probably gauge the popularity of the sport growing based on seeing people's personalities on social media versus just showing up and competing.
Yeah, it's massively different.
I agree. And the thing with what we do versus maybe what Wall was doing, and there's many paths when you go through what we do on a production end. One of the things that I decided to do from the get-go is I opened up a distribution company, because one of the things that you find in entertainment is that there's a lot of people making product out there. And the problem is sometimes getting a product done and putting the product somewhere. And you have a middle end to be able to do that. And so now you have a relying factor. You have to rely on somebody in the middle to be able to pitch who you are, to present who you are, to be able to place who you are. And in business, I try to take those unknowns out. So as we got started with, Locked and Loaded the very first season, I started to get involved on the distribution end. And that way I was no longer worried about whether or not I'm going to see, XYZ distributors or this distribution company. I just became a distribution company, and that's actually a very successful thing for me. We have about 50 titles that we're distributing right now outside of arm wrestling. But, the problem that you find in some of these products is that you create a budget that you think is going to be attainable in a very unknown way. And sometimes having the longevity of being over budgeted and not understanding what your actual revenue back in can create a downturn in anybody's, business plan. And I think what happened maybe with Wall in some ways, and I don't know, I'm speculating when I say this, is because the product was really never landing in a home. From my understanding, they were paying for airtime. They're spending hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on production. And when you do that with the uncertainty of being able to put it somewhere, that is a huge risk. And now you also deal sometimes when you're trying that level, you're going to go, what they call with the unionized model, where it's very high expense. You're paying, big rates. You're going through a production studio, which Wall did. So you're not paying the independent rate. You're not paying the Gregg Sharp rate, who's going out and hiring his own DPs and his own editors, and you're paying a package. And sometimes that number gets ahead, and you have to make a business decision, a hard business decision. And if you don't see the revenue coming in from behind it, then the hard business decision is you got to kind of shut it down or reevaluate and change paths. And I think that's what Wall kind of did. COVID hit, and the feel was that they didn't want to experience any kind of pushback with COVID from my perspective and talking to people. And I think that kind of opened the door, maybe unfortunately for Steve. And there's always some buzz out there that he's coming back or doing some more stuff. And if he does, I think, life is, open for anybody to put their money where their mouth is. But I think for Steve, what happened is open up the door for Engen and, in the WAF out there in Europe. And they were able to get some financial support and, do what a lot of promotions couldn't do for a long time. And that was put the world's best against the world's best. And it took off. And I think that there's, maybe a hard path for Walt to come back and try to compete on that level because, your business plan and business model, your promotional model has to exist within a time frame of what's going on currently. And right now, currently, if you're on the top elite level, let's call it Devin and Levon and the 25 other guys that I can't pronounce, but I'm sure are super guys, but if you're those 27, 28 guys and, throw in a Matt Maskin here and there and certainly throw in a Todd Hutchins on a lower weight or John Brzink. But if you're in that group, well, we're not going anywhere, right? There's no reason for you to go outside of East versus West at this point. And that being really because they've got your value. And why would you not want to pull against the best if you're on that level? Does Devin Lorette going to come back and pull in the World Series of Arm Wrestling to try to win, $2,500 for first place on super heavyweights and, a couple thousand in the overall? And the answer is no, right? And rightfully no. I mean, we're growing in levels. He's at a level that's way up here. It would be counterintuitive for him to move his brand in that way. But in saying that, the business model for me then becomes, where do we find the next Devin Lorette, right? Where do we find the next great person that we can create the relationship with, make the hometown hero, build that persona, build that social media, give them value, create the loyalty. And then when we get to the point where that individual is ready to be on the world stage, now we have some leverage, right? Now we have some footing. So getting back to why Wall's not around and why they may not come back, I just don't know if the timeline is right. They may have to wait for someone to come down in the sport for them to be able to step in and fill a hole. But certainly if they do, I'll support them as well. I mean, I get to the age, guys, where, being competitive, I compete against myself, right? I only try to make my product better. If I have to compete against everybody else, then I'm just going to get grayer and sore, and Jody's going to do more reps on the hammer curl than I will. And, I'll be honest with you, Jody's a strong dude, and he's a sandbagger. And you heard it from me. We went and tried to do the pull-up challenge, and about 10 days in, he told me that he was the Oregon State pull-up challenge. He did 1,000 pull-ups in like 2.5 or 3 hours. And I said, well, wait a second, what challenge is that? But he sandbagged on that one. But I enjoy doing those challenges with him. He's a super cool individual, and his family's been very welcoming to me, and I appreciate that. So,
yeah. I wanted to talk to you about, I have the misfortune of living where I live because I cannot seem to find the World Series anywhere because, Canadian television is a little bit different. But
VPN.
Yeah, I know I need a VPN and I need to do all that stuff. But season 2, when can we expect it?
Great. Two good things that just mentioned. We are going to get onto Roku next. I put it on Tubi first. I don't know if you get Roku up there, Pluto. And then we're going to be on YouTube. We're going to release it into YouTube because I think Tubi really was more of a, I don't want to say a medal, if you will, but certainly a starting point to show that we could put it somewhere outside of typical streaming, right? And put it on a platform that's maybe a bit of a level up. But we are going to start distributing it more on more platforms here over the course of the next 60 days. So hopefully we'll be able to get you that season 1 so that you can see it. And that's been a little bit of a challenge too, because Europe is the same thing. They have a lot of blockages out there. So, but if I would have released it somewhere else, I think the value of being on a Fox network stream would have diminished a little bit because it dilutes the fact of where you are, right? You become everywhere instead of exclusive.
Right.
Season 2, we've gone through what we call our streaming string outs and screeners. That's where I'm at right now. Actually, the last couple of days, I start going through all of the fine details, making sure every name is spelled right, making sure the credits are spelled right. So we have all 10 episodes done in value. The quality control check now kicks in. I go through every episode. It's about 20 hours of footage in a season. We have 10 episodes that are roughly between an hour and 2. So I have to go through those multiple times. Once I've stamped that, we color correct it, we audio correct it, and then we put it through closed captioning. So we're about 3 weeks out from delivering it to Tubi. And then from there, it's about 2 weeks out from them getting it up. Because now we've been greenlit on them. We don't have to go through the process of making sure they want the show and that sort of thing. So that's the process. I'm guesstimating somewhere second week of May is where you'll see season 2. Barring, knock on wood, it's a wood table, any hiccups or any kind of quirkiness that we may find. Well, we want to be able to get it out there in a timely manner and certainly with really good quality control.
That's not far away.
No, that certainly isn't. In the chat, any questions, let us know, please, and we'll fire them out there.
Wow, I just thought of something. I'm going to be in all 3 seasons. Boy, oh boy.
That you are. And actually Dallas is an interesting location because we've had a lot of great return from most of the athletes. In interesting way, one of your colleagues, Marcus Tedesco, went from pulling in the first season to refereeing in the second season. But Billy and Sarah and Dustin out there, and you guys out there with the TAL, and it would be remiss of me not to mention Danny Gillian, who's a great supporter. Danny's just a terrific guy all the way around. It's a pleasure coming out to Dallas. It really is. Even coming out to that tournament that I was at, and
the Central,
yeah, and being able to enjoy it, and Billy offering the ability to grab the mic and for me to practice a little bit of promoting and certainly getting people pumped up was fun. And I think that's the kind of the allure of arm wrestling. It's hard to explain to people outside of arm wrestling why arm wrestling is such an intriguing sport. For me, it's the camaraderie. I can go to a place and find 100 to 300 people that I truly enjoy. I don't necessarily have to look at them and have the same values in terms of political or lifestyle values, although arm wrestlers are all kind of typically within the same value set for the most part. But you get there, and I enjoy everyone. I mean, and I can't go to a wedding. If I go to a wedding and there's 300 people there, there's maybe 4 people I really want to see, right? The other, 296 of the 300, it's like, you're just kind of doing the cordiality of it all. But in arm wrestling, it really is fun. And it keeps me young in a way that, when I got into the sport 10 years ago, it wasn't because I thought I was going to be the next world champion. It was because I really needed something to engage in my life. I had retired from health clubs. A lot of people may or may not know I owned 18 health clubs at one point. And I just was starting to get lethargic, and I just didn't have anything to really focus on. And I was watching Game of Arms, I think at Some Value, and I saw Travis on TV. And I looked at, and I said to my son at the time we're watching, I said, I know that guy. And he's like, Dad, you don't know that guy. I go, yeah, I really do know this guy. And he goes, well, how do you know this guy? I said, well, fast forward or reverse back to Mr. Olympias. He was repping Sly Stallone's product. And I actually met him, sat down with him, and had a great conversation on the back area when he was eating. And he was just a great guy. And the funny thing is obviously when you're a fan, the fan is always the one who remembers the circumstance, right? The athlete is the one that really, he's maybe lost in the sauce of just overwhelming numbers. But the athlete, in terms of Travis, he made an impression on me. So when I finally got back in and started arm wrestling, and that was with the UAL, I ended up finding Alan Fisher, and Alan was super welcoming. Dave Depew, Paul Stevens, the guys here in San Diego. I quickly realized that, gym strength and arm wrestling strength are really two different things. But no matter where you were, these guys didn't care. They worked with you. They were like, we're here to practice. We're having a good time. It's come here on a Thursday night or a Saturday night or a Saturday afternoon and have a practice. It's a place to be. And that's what drew me into the sport. Sadly, I've not had a lot of success in the sport, but that's okay. I've had a few injuries in the sport, which, maybe have precluded me from being a little bit better, but I'm not delusional either. The proverbial pancakes, or as my son likes to say, the Trembolone sandwiches that many of the athletes eat at 53, that's just not me. I want to get to 93 and, I'm in good health, again, knock on wood. But there's a level of dedication you got to put in to get to that level, at least at this point in life, if you want to get there. But the sport's such an amazing sport. I love it, and even to get to meet you, Ryan, in Dallas, it was not an awkward situation, right? Other than the injury was an awkward situation. But to be able to walk up to somebody that you've seen pull on high levels and have a great conversation with, or just a high with, and not have any kind of pushback, and have at least a professional connection is great. And I think that's why I want the sport to be seen out there, because I think the sport will grow. We're still very small in the U.S. I mean, I'm probably even smaller in Canada. So it's really getting the message out to everyone that this is really a legit sport. It is a competitive sport. It creates a dynamic in your lifestyle that you have to train for. It creates a dynamic in your lifestyle that you can put up goals to accomplish. And it's family friendly. It's an event. You can come down and watch people compete. And there's not a lot of difference between boxing and arm wrestling and one-on-one sports. I mean, when I boxed, although I trained hard to get into the ring, there's always that level of nervousness. You're out in front of your fans, you're out in front of your friends, and you want to succeed. There's a little bit of apprehension. Then all of a sudden, the adrenaline kicks in, and then it kind of, all the noise dissipates. You get into that zone, and win, lose, or draw, you're in that zone, and for those short moments of time, you're actually in front of people doing what you say you can do. And I think, much like boxing, much like martial arts, much like a lot of these niches, I think that once we get more mainstream, I think the sport will grow finally, and that's really the goal.
Yeah, there was a weird time there for a little while. You mentioned Game of Arms, and I used to really enjoy that show. And we had the unlucky misfortune of AMC changing the direction they were going and getting rid of all reality-based TV. And half of a season just went missing. So half of season 2 was recorded but never released. I would really like to see that someday, if it's not just destroyed or hidden in the back of somebody's closet. But the chances of that happening, I think, are pretty slim, because I think there was some Canadians that were recruited to go down on that particular season, and we just never got to see it.
Yep.
And it was a weird time for that show with AMC. They had a very high level of interest. I think they hit the 500,000 viewer mark, which we've hit 500,000 viewers now with Locked and Loaded season 1, which is great. But they hit the 500,000 viewer mark on an episode. And I want to say that the real problem with reality shows and being on terrestrial TV at that time is market share, right? And when you start to, everybody brings a show in kind of a backdrop to entertainment. People pitch shows all the time. So when Jansen and Steve Kaplan and these guys, pitch the Game of Arms, they get development money, right? So when they may have come in and AMC might have said to them for season 1, we're going to give you $1 million to do season 1. And so if they're good businessmen, which hopefully they were able to say, okay, well, we can produce season 1 for $500,000, and now we got $500,000 for P&A, which is, really, press and advertising, publicity and advertising. And, we have some money for ourselves to make this thing work. The problem is that when you put it in front of the viewer, you're always looking to place advertisements. And where you either make or break a show is what you can value off of that advertisement. I owned a company called Fit Pro Marketing out of New York City when I was younger. And we would look at the frequency, the reach, the demographic. And for Game of Arms, it was, even though we had 500,000 viewers, or they had 500,000 viewers at the time, the demographic really wasn't strong enough for advertisers to really get behind and for them to sell, time slots for advertising. And that's how they recoup their money, right? Because they need to sell that spot, that airtime, in order to, bring back their $1 million plus. And sometimes it's a bell curve, and sometimes it's a cliff, right? Sometimes a network will let you grow because they see the potential, and sometimes they look to change their whole schematic and say, hey, it's just not Game of Arms, it's the 4 or 5 other shows we have. There's no money in this for us. We get $1.25 on average for a commercial in every market, where we know that we can bring in another show and get, 4 times as much. So it becomes really a dollar cost averaging game for them. And that's why you see so many shows come and go. And they get pitched. The idea gets pitched. I mean, we've talked to Bravo, we've talked to CMTs, we talked to a lot of places, and we pitch these ideas, and some of them get picked. We have a show called Bikini Showdown. We're going to start shooting on May 10th in Dallas. It's a train wreck. It's a train wreck of a great concept, and I'm going to tell you what, it will do 20 times better than any arm wrestling show right now on out there. Why? Because you've got women,
girls in bikinis,
craziness, train wrecks. People are not going to stop watching. Now, a show like that, though, whereas, when you look at that and you say, well, I'm an arm wrestler, why can't we get that money? Why? Well, we just, we have, that has a bigger viewership, right? I mean, that appeals to a lot bigger level of market than arm wrestling does at this point.
of course, 100%.
But here's the fun thing with me. Being that I have a day job, I'm not a singer, I'm not a dancer, I don't have to quit it. All of my entertainment money is targeted in terms of where I want to redevelop. And some of it is targeted at arm wrestling because I love the sport. Some of it is targeted at, new products. We've just finished filming Got You. That's coming out now shortly. We're going to release that. We've got Born to Hustle we released. We got 48 other titles that we've released on these streams. So these revenues for me are really what I call a business, but also some of my fun developing money. So that way I'm not, at the end of season 3, I'm not scratching whether or not I can pay my rent. I already got it paid. Don't worry about that. But I'm more interested to see what we can do to put more into this to grow that, that bigger picture. And at some point, the goal is when you get into business, at least for me, is I enter and I exit. So my entrance into this is to grow the sport to a point where there's so much interest on the upper end that somebody perhaps like WME and the UFC comes in and says, you know what, we really like what you do, Gregg, and what you've done, but we want to take over. We'll give you an honorary position for 3 years and some front row seats at the next UFC events. But we can now take your sport and take it to the next dimension, which for me would be a win. Not only a win on the business end, but also a win on a sport end and what I've given back to the athletes, because at that point, it's a selflessness. It's not a selfishness. And that is the game plan really for me over the course of the next 10 years, is to get it to some place where somebody perhaps younger, stronger, bigger financially than I am can take over and put in that time to even expand it even more. And if I can do that, then my gift back to the sport that I've enjoyed is kind of fulfilled. And for many people, that's foolishness, right? They want to hold on to something forever. But for me, I know my limitations. At that point, I'll be 63, and I'm hoping that I'll be in the 10th season of Bikini Showdown and be an honorary judge. And obviously, my show, I could be an honorary judge, but even that has to have an enter and an exit, and that's part of life. I enjoy it, and I think that
I volunteer tribute. I'll judge.
All right, no worries. We're shooting May 10th through 20th, so if you're, I'll definitely have a closed chat for people to be able to come down. It'll be fun. It'll be different. Let me tell you something. You will never see a bikini show quite like the one we're going to shoot.
I'm just saying. I volunteer. I'm a stone's throw.
All right, sounds good.
My wife will kill me, but whatever.
Hey, it's okay. At least you'll have fun while dying.
Well, you make a good point, and a lot of parallels have been drawn between slap fighting and arm wrestling. Why they would pick up on that one and not arm wrestling? Well, I think it just got too much attention too fast, that other sport.
Well, I mean, it's also like you're knocking the hell out of somebody, which people love to see. I mean, look at how many views the Twisted Tea guy got for smacking old boy in the head with a Twisted Tea, and how fast Twisted Tea product went up. I mean, people thrive on chaos. It's really how people love chaos for some reason.
It's a hard dynamic. When I owned Explode Fight Series, and we did 100 events across the country, and we did well. It was a great time. My kids grew up, and I wanted to watch them go through high school. And when you deal with drama on any level, especially with athletes, and MMA has a lot of drama, guys. I have to be honest with you. Dealing with guys that are supposedly asked, I don't know if you can say that word. I'm sorry, butt kickers of the world on YouTube.
We're past 15 minutes. You're good.
You can say whatever you want now.
All right. When you have these guys that are really tough dudes, in value, they're getting in the ring and they're trying to beat the snot out of each other. The drama on the backside is ridiculous. For me, when I box, you had an opponent, you trained for the opponent, and you didn't worry about whether the opponent was going to beat you or not. You trained to beat them. But in MMA, it was every night to 11:30 at night, listen to athletes cry and complain. It's just too good. Am I overmatched? It was this. It's like, so, paralleling the story to slap fighting, when slap fighting came out, a lot of the guys that were in the Explode Fight Series said, let's do this again. And my answer was no. And not because I didn't see the popularity of it. The problem that I always saw of it was the legality of it. When you look at life in terms of sports, one of the biggest, faux pas of sports may have been the CTE cover-ups with the NFL. And all of that's based upon concussive injury. And now you bring in an element of just impact to the head, right? Just impact to the head. So for me, I looked at this and said, well, even though we're going to insure it, and even though we're going to have the waivers and we can win it on a legal end, where does this really go? And when does this sport really turn out to be, banned or outlawed or devalued? Because that athlete, after 2 years of slap fighting, can't say his name, doesn't know where he is in the middle of Walmart, and is hopelessly now disabled because of this impact. Or, God forbid, somebody has a DVT or some sort of hidden embolism in the body, and they get smacked and they go down and it loosens up and they die. And it's understandable that this can happen. But for $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, you really have to do your homework on a risk versus reward end. And I'm sure William Morris and UFC did their homework. Because for me, I can't imagine that lawsuit that's coming sometime down the road, which will come, is going to be worth it. But if you're going to make $1 billion or $500 million, and you're going to settle for $50 million, I guess that's the business decision, but how do you justify looking in the mirror at the end of the night knowing that you hurt somebody or you allowed somebody to hurt somebody to a point where they no longer can function in society? I just couldn't do that. But the thing is, as you said, Nathan, slap fighting is all about, watching somebody else crumble, their bad fortune of getting knocked out and hurt, and that viciousness. And, there's enough of the keyboard warriors out there, as you guys have probably seen over the years, who hate on everyone, that they just love to see people get hurt. And it's a dynamic of this ego or this machismo or this, or this charismatic default, if you will, of wanting to see people injured that drives it. And, boxing has been that sport forever in a competition and MMA. Now it's slap fighting. You got bare knuckle fighting out there. But you're right, Ryan. Why didn't they pick up arm wrestling? Maybe because of the lead up. Maybe because our sport is so fast. Maybe because our sport in some ways are boring. I hate to say that, but most of the people out there that arm wrestle are not charismatic people, right? I mean, if you go to an event and you see Caleb Ricks in Dallas, who's a terrific 209 or 239 or wherever he lands, he's just not charismatic. He's a quiet guy. Ryan, you're a quiet guy. I mean, you're not donning a lucha libre mask and jumping in and it's tough, and that's why telling the stories, you have to really find people that have an interesting appeal. There's a lot of guys that wanted to be on season 2 that would be just great guys to film, but there was no correlation to why someone would want to watch them, right? So there's an art form to picking the characters, and that's I think part of the downside of arm wrestling is that we're kind of regular guys in many ways. That is Uncle John's getting smacked in the head at Arm Gods and getting cut. Word has it, and I can't verify word has it. I mean, I was told through the grapevine that was staged. Now, if it wasn't staged, I feel bad for him for getting cut, and I thought that was kind of outrageous. But if it was staged, then really is the value of arm wrestling, as I question it, going more towards entertainment, which is more of a scripted view of arm wrestling, which I don't think does the sport a great value. Are we going to a scripted end where it no longer is a sport of excellence and achievement? It's a sport of entertainment. If we're going that way, I think that we're probably on that cliff.
I think Igor had something going at one point before, obviously, COVID and stuff like that, and the war in Ukraine and stuff. Igor had something really good going with Zloty in top 8, right? You had, not only did you have the arm wrestling, but you also had the entertainment factor. You did have women bringing out round cards. You had a DJ there keeping the crowd entertained at all times and stuff like that. Like, there was a lot of merit to what Igor was doing, and now, I mean, with him coming back, I could see it being the same way. And then Igor's product, top 8 and Zloty was always a top tier product, always had a lot of views, always had really good money behind it. So,
but the major criticism of that was that the length of time it took between getting to that arm wrestling table and having a match happen was way too long.
Yes.
So that was kind of the lack of action leading up to it.
Yes. But he did have that entertainment factor trying to offset that at the same time.
The only reason I would say that we might be on that cliff is that we had a gimmick overshadow elite arm wrestling. They were made the main event. So
and there were some amazing matches too.
Yeah, there was. And the gimmick should not outweigh the elites in the sport.
I mean, the BLM Bogdan Stoica match was worth the price of admission.
And that's, the Thursday Night Fights concept for me is to get away from the gimmick, but you still have to have a value. And I think the value that
Thursday night fights, Thursday night arm fights are going to bring in for the event is that we're going to concentrate on the celebrity value. It's not a gimmick, but it is a gimmick, right? You know, if you're going to go to an event and you, like this past weekend, I was talking with Snoop. You know, so if you go to an event and Snoop is there, you know, he's a personality. So people are going to gravitate to watch a show or come to a show because of the personalities that are there. The personalities can sometimes overshadow the event if you let it. However, the personalities brings the attention to the event, which is much needed.
Yeah.
I mean, look what Discovery did with Snoop, right? Let him talk over like animals attacking stuff and animal scenes, and it had some of the most views Discovery ever had.
Right. Well, but the gimmick, though, as you said, Ryan, outweighed the event, and you know, back in the day, I'm old, so we always called that jumping the Shark Tank, and what that was Happy Days. Yeah. For those of you who don't, you know, when Fonzie finally jumped the Shark Tank on Happy Days, everything went down from there.
Never jumped the shark.
Never jumped the Shark Tank, and they may have jumped the Shark Tank, right? I mean, at some point, you know, do people watch Armed Gods? And I say this hypothetically. But do people now start to watch Armed Gods because they want to see the scripted value and it takes away from the arm wrestler? Or are they going to watch it for the value of the arm wrestling and still want to have that gimmick value in between? It's a tough call, but they made a decision. And here's the one thing that I always say about people who are in business. Whether you like the decision or not, they made a decision, right? I mean, they put a stamp out there that this is what they want to bring to the table in their first event. And kudos to them for having an event, you know, and bringing it to the table. Now you have to live with that decision on a business end. Is that decision that you made to bring this kind of a level of entertainment, if you'll call it that, to the table, the right value? Only they are going to know, right? When they look at the dollars and cents and they look at their sponsors and they look at when they want to do the second one, you know, you'll see whether or not they gravitate to going back to arm wrestling, or if they stay with the gimmick, and that will be the end of it all.
Well, Paul Maiden already said the next match is going to be electric elbow pads, where it's going to shock you and make sure you close your hand on the person. So I'm not kidding.
And you know what? Guiltily, I'll probably watch that just to see what the hell happens.
All right. Eventually it has to end, right? Like you got the thumbtack match. I mean, you had their first event where Evan hit Paul Maiden with a beer can. Then you have their second event where Evan hits John with a beer can. Like, does it just continue to?
Well, I mean,
everybody's going to hit everybody with a beer can?
No, just that one guy. One guy. It's like when the honky tonk man used to hit the guy with the
hit guitar. Everybody with a guitar, yeah.
With a guitar, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. You know, I mean, everybody. I liken it to when Johnny Dabo went after Scott Wynn as a referee. I mean, that's still one of the best watched videos out there.
Scott lit him up too.
So you know, hey, listen. When you're putting your money out there, you're always making tough decisions, and that's really the crux of business. You know, you have a game plan. You have to always evaluate, reevaluate, and then make adjustments as you go. Maybe this is an evaluation that they've made, that they see that there's a value that's bringing to the table, and they'll stay with it. And that's their niche, right? What's going to separate Armed Gods out from World Series of Arm Wrestling, from East versus West, from, you know, maybe Igor coming back or whomever else is out there? You know, maybe this is why they're going to get people to pay attention.
I think they call themselves the Renegade Promotion.
Oh yeah, they own it. They're owning it.
Yep.
Well, I mean, you know, when you get on these platforms, it's attention span, right? I mean, we've been on now for almost an hour, coming up on an hour. You know, it's how you keep people engaged. You know, and maybe this is the engagement factor, because if, you know, the old Howard Stern factor, you never know what he's going to say, so you always stayed engaged. You never know what's going to happen at Armed Gods, so you're going to watch it because you never know if Oh man, I'll really date myself. Morgana, the kissing bandit, comes out of retirement for all for all those older people out there and runs onto the field or runs into the arm gods and lays a big kiss on one of the athletes. I mean, you just never know. I mean, sadly, I date myself with some of this stuff, but how you keep that viewer on the screen is very important these days. I mean, we live on a very fast-paced, time-sensitive lifestyle.
Well, it's kind of like, I'm sure like East versus West. I mean, I'm sure there's sales for this upcoming card having Devin versus Levon. I mean, I'm sure if we could see the numbers, I'm sure every card that Devin is on does exponentially more sales than a card that doesn't have him on. It's kind of like the UFC with Conor McGregor. Conor has 5 out of the top 6 biggest pay-per-view sales ever. It's it's the same exact thing.
It is, but it's interesting. I actually just did an episode that's going to air this week on Inside Arm Wrestling, and I talked about timing. This is April. We're in 2024. We're in April 2024. When you have an event like Devin versus Levon, I don't know that right now there's any bigger arm wrestling value that we're going to see in 2024 between these two. And so now you've set up your season to be really that, unfortunately, that Shark Tank value, where you've got your biggest event in your first quarter or your start of your second quarter. Where do you take the promotion? Who's the next best interesting? I mean, Hermes is a great puller, but is anybody going to watch Hermes pull to maybe get to a shot at Devin or Levon? I mean, at that point, who cares, right? I mean, not that he's not a great person to watch, but the far value or the mass value of social media are on these two gentlemen. And when this match is over, if Levon crushes Devin, okay, then really there's no place for this to go. If Devin beats Levon, then you can always have a rubber match, right? So you can have one more rubber match to see who is the head of the pack. Levon can always make the excuse, I'm injured, I came back from injury, I didn't have enough warm-up. Not that he's going to make an excuse, but you can pitch it that way. That, this was my first back. Devin is at the top of his game, in my opinion, right now. He's been active. He's got, he's fluid on the table. So if he doesn't win, where does Devin go? Number one, I don't know. And if he does win, then that's really the only place where East versus West can go, because their counterpart, King of the Table, has already shifted to be their second tier or social media branch of arm wrestling, right? I mean, none of the matches at King of the Table really have a value outside of social media. Their biggest matches typically have been what? Larry Wheels with social media following. Arm wrestler Arconis. You've got Arconis arm wrestling on this next one against Schoolboy.
East versus West doing the same thing now. I mean, you have as much as I love Neil, Armour's doing the same thing. I mean, they're all trying to grow the brand with social media. You have Odd and Larrick getting ready to pull a King of the Table event, not King of the Table, sorry, East versus West event down in Florida. They're doing that obviously to bring in eyes. You have Schoolboy and Leonidas. Schoolboy has the number one. Well, him and Alex have the number one YouTube channel in the world for arm wrestling. So obviously that's going to bring in views. And then King of the Table. Yeah, you have a lot of amazing matches. Get ready to call it Jesus Christ. But I mean, they're putting Michael Todd on there too, because I mean, whether people like Michael or hate Michael,
he's got a following.
He's got a big YouTube following. I mean, he has a massive following, and people love to. It's kind of like it's kind of like Floyd. I use Michael as like Floyd Mayweather as a great example. People didn't tune in to watch Floyd Mayweather win; they tuned in to watch Floyd Mayweather lose. People don't like Michael because stylistically, so they're going to turn in to see if he loses. Like they want to see Michael lose just because this style is controversial. Like,
well, I think it goes a little bit deeper than that too on a business end. I mean, listen, as a contractor, if I go in and I write up a contract for $500,000 to build a house, I already know what my hard costs have to be. If my hard costs are over $500,000, I'm going to lose money. If my hard costs are at $300,000, I'm making 40% off the $500,000. So when these guys are looking at the numbers, they've already tabulated that they know that they're going to get, X amount of dollars off of social media, whether it's 10,000, 12,000, 50,000, whatever that number is. And then they're going to, if they're smart, then they're going to deconstruct their event to make sure that they break even. I mean, if they're good in business, that's what they're going to do.
I think my point behind all that though was like if Levon comes in and just completely erases Devin again, like he did in their first match, how much does East versus West start relying on these, I don't want to say gimmick matches, but these social media based matches to continue to keep their product elevated? Because Devin is your number one. So if Devin can't beat Levon, and he's shown to be, Levon is the end all be all, which he clearly is, where does East versus West product go? If you because this match is kind of it's their World Series, it's their Super Bowl. Sure. Like, you need Devin to win this match in reality for your product to keep elevating the way it has been. Otherwise, you're going to start seeing this.
Well, you have to analyze that a little bit, Nathan. And what I mean by that is that when you look at the components of Devin, and you look at the components of entertainment, and I liken this. I had a long conversation with a Nepalese film director, wanted me to distribute his films just recently, and the reason why people gravitate to the U.S. for entertainment is because we're really what we call the legitimacy of entertainment. You can be the biggest thing in Bollywood, in India. You can be great in Europe. You can be great wherever. But unless you really land in the U.S. in terms of value of entertainment, you're kind of always you're never really legitimate. And I think that Devin creates a legitimacy for Europe by having him as the head of the value of North America, because he's accepted by, let's call the U.S., Canada, English-speaking entertainment world, and his growth as a social media personality is the value. But when you take that person out, as you're saying, Nathan, if he loses, and certainly I wish them both luck. I don't have a dog in the fight to say who should win or who should lose. But when you destroy your hometown hero, or you destroy your meal card, your meal ticket, there's a risk to that. UFC did it for a long time. I did it for a long time. The way to be successful is to build up heroes that people gravitate around, that want to see. The criticism of the UFC has always been, well, how come the number one contender doesn't get the title fight? Well, because the number one contender has a zero rating when it comes to pay-per-views, right? So, we would love to see the best fighter win, but let's put it this way: John Jones is going to sell. Devin Lorette is maybe the John Jones in some way of arm wrestling for East versus West, or Conor McGregor of arm wrestling. But where they'll have to go, in my opinion, is they're going to have to find some sort of personality, if not redeveloping Devin into the contender again, but finding some sort of personality that can fill that shoes, that is the villain or the heel that Europeans will get behind, that they really want. They want Levon to win because it shows strength of Europe, and it shows strength of that history of that of that pridefulness. And Devin has gravitated to become the heel, which, whether he is a heel or not a heel, he's now played that card. So really, to answer your question, is that they're going to need to look for another personality that they can grow.
That was my whole point. Like, I think it hurts the East versus West product with Devin losing this match is my point. I think it hurts them in the long run, and in the short term for sure, because now if he loses to Levon, then the next pay-per-view isn't going to be, you're not going to have the sales, and the next and the next and the next. Anybody you put in front of Levon, if Devin gets just absolutely ran over, it's not going to be.
Or the new Devon comes out, Devin comes out. That's the other thing. They were smart enough to kind of redevelop Matt Mask, and I like Matt. Matter of fact, I'm a big Matt Mask fan. I think he's a great guy. For me, I think that there's a value of why they brought him back, and that's a popularity end. He's very relatable for a lot of people. So I think they did a great job with that. I don't know that I would have put him on a King of the Cage match, but King of the Table match.
But
I mean, they put him against Frank. Frank destroyed him. They put him against Saunders. Saunders just absolutely ran over him so bad. Prudnick ran. I mean, he's won one match at King of the Table. I think that was against Wagner, right? I think that was his only
Right.
match he's
Yeah.
won.
but he's popular,
Yes.
and that's
Yeah.
so they're going to have to look for the popularity, and I think that's one of the reasons why they're trying to do this challenge series. I think they're trying to find some popularity. But you know what? We are as a whole, as a group of athletes, still challenged in terms of that entertainment popularity. Gabriel, young guy, good-looking kid. He's got a following. He does great on YouTube, but he's not he was a pawn for Auden. I don't know what Auden weighs. He looks like he's a 200-plus guy. Gabriel Young walks around at 170, 176.
Auden was like 217 in that match.
Yeah, but it was a great pick, right? Because Gabriel has a good following. Same with the Whisper, Etienne. Great following. So they're building athletes. I mean, somebody's got a smart enough value that they're going to start building the hometown hero, and maybe that hometown hero is Auden. He's a nice sounding kid on social media. I've never met him. He's a good looking young man. He kind of holds his personality and poise well, it seems.
I think what shot him in the foot a little bit too is the after pulls with Reno. Because you have Reno who is a world champion at 19 years old. Like they're the same age, but
Right.
Reno is way up here and Auden is way down here.
You guys, I could tell you, I went up to I call it the Armenian practice in LA. There's this young kid, Ilya, and I don't want to destroy his last name. He's a 21-year-old, 209-pound guy who's going to be pulling Dallas Langston in Arizona. He's got a bicep the size of cantaloupe. And let me tell you, he pulled Vrez. There's a video out there of him pulling Vrez in practice. Vrez, a friend of mine, but I don't think he wanted that video to go out there. That kid there is every bit of a real deal kid. I mean, I watched him compete on a practice level for 2.5 hours, and no one really could move him. And when you're talking about some of the better pullers in LA, this kid never went from center of the table. And I'm a Dallas Langston fan. He's a friend. This kid's got a big hand. He's got a big elbow to fingertip lever. He's as fast as Alan Fisher in his day. This kid probably he probably won't stay on the U.S. scene very long because he's a visa holder. So I think he has to go back in 6 months. But this kid here is a real deal puller. I think Dallas has got his hands full on all levels. I don't think the strap does him any benefit. I mean, this kid pulled for 2.5 hours in the strap. So
yeah, I mean, I'll counter that a little bit. I mean, you can pull in the strap for 2.5 hours. Like, yeah, I mean, we do that at practice quite frequently. But Dallas is a strap-based puller that is tricky as can be in setups. Like, just because you're in the strap doesn't mean
you're our sponsor. This kid's bicep was as big as this 12-inch Rumble roller.
Like, just because you're in the strap, like, I can set up fair with people in the strap, and they're like, oh, I feel really good. But then literally we can apply the strap again, and I can set up differently, and they're like, oh, crap, I'm screwed. And that's the way Dallas is in the strap. Dallas is very, very, very smart.
Yeah,
very technical. He's got his game down in that end.
And Dallas will drop into that like King's movie type open arm position with pronation locked and kind of a King's hook, and he'll make the kid work. I'll be at Arizona, so it'll be interesting.
Well, guys, I hate to cut off discussion, but I gotta go.
No worries. I gotta put the Carhartt back on as well and resume my personality of out in the field.
Sounds great. Greg, thanks for joining. Thanks, Nathan. Thanks for subbing in.
Of course.
Absolutely, guys.
Yeah, we'll be only good things. We'll look forward to watching all the upcoming stuff and maybe get my way onto one of those Thursday night fights. You got it. Heel up because I would love to have you for sure. The left arm is top notch. I actually got his left's good. I confirmed a match. I can't talk about it yet because I'm waiting for the promoter to announce it, but had practice last night and it's going well.
Nice.
That's awesome. I'll be cheering for you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody, for watching.
Later.
Great, guys. Thank you, guys. Have a great week.
Take it easy.